Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I just got confirmation there a couple days ago that my 5th edition Player's Handbooks have been shipped out. Not sure when they'll arrive, probably within the next week or so. Really looking forward to getting them. I know some people already have theirs, so I hope they're enjoying them. When I do get my new one, I do plan on doing a full review of it. In the meantime though, I wanted to shoot a series of videos talking about the things that I want to see with 5th edition, and not so much in terms of the rule sets or anything like that. We can certainly get into that when the books themselves do come out. This is more or less how I want to see Wizards of the Coast actually handle the D&D property, handle the releases, what things I like to see in terms of releases and product lines and things of that nature. So it's going to be a series of videos, like I said, each one on a different subject. This week's subject is going to be about the different campaign settings that I want to see. Some that I would like, some that might be a possibility, and then at least one that we probably won't see again, at least for quite some time. So this week is all about campaign settings. Alright, so we're going to start with the one that we all know is going to be the first setting to be released. It's the one that's actually the official setting now for 5th edition, and that is the Forgotten Realms. Again, not a mystery here. Everybody knows that this will be coming out. The reason I want to talk about it is because I'm actually kind of excited to see what happens with this setting, especially where I found out that it's actually going to be designed by actual authors of the Forgotten Realms setting as opposed to just people working for Wizards of the Coast. So people like, for example, Ed Greenwood, R.A. Salvatore, as well as a few others like Richard Levi. There's some of the more famous Forgotten Realms authors are actually designing the setting, so I'm looking forward to that. That being said, I really actually did enjoy the 4th edition setting, mostly because they had advanced it far enough ahead that it didn't feel as connected to the novels and the current events as the 3rd edition one did. So for people who were new to it, if they were the DM and they were playing with a group of people who knew a lot about the novels, it was a little bit difficult to run for them if you wanted to do something that was kind of different than what they had originally read in the novels. So I kind of like that change. I hope they don't go too far back from what they did, because I actually like the setting. But any change, I guess, will be hopefully for the better. So the 5th edition setting takes place after 4th, so after the events of the Spell Plague, and then after the events of the Sundering, which I'm still actually only on the 3rd novel so far, but it seems to me that basically the Sundering has to do with the deities and their chosen, and perhaps a major shift as far as the gods' involvement in the setting, but I guess we'll see when it actually comes out. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to this. I've been a fan of the Forgotten Realms for quite some time now, and it'll be really nice to get the new version, again, done by the authors themselves. So that should be coming out, like I said. I think that'll be the first setting that they end up releasing, and I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Even if I wasn't going to buy 5th edition initially, I was planning on picking up this book, so that should be coming out probably sometime, I would say early to mid next year at the latest, and I am looking extremely forward to it, and I'm sure other people probably will be as well. Alright, another setting that has a pretty good chance, I'd say, of making the cut for 5th edition would be Dragonlance, if for no other reason than the fact that they kind of mention it a few times in the basic rules. Talk about the different types of elves with the Sylvan Esti, Kagan Esti, and they even mention the Noble Kender. So there's a pretty good chance that this one will make it as well. This is actually the first campaign setting I actually ever bought, was Dragonlance. I bought the 3rd edition, or 3.5 one. I was looking for a pre-made setting to use, and I just really didn't, at the time, want to go back to Forgotten Realms, where it was 3.0. But yeah, got this one here, and I'm hoping that they change things up a little bit, because the 3rd edition setting, if I complain about Forgotten Realms feeling connected to the novels, I mean, this literally felt like all the different settings and eras were recreating the novels themselves. Some of the adventure ideas either have you taking on the iconic heroes, or basically making characters to replace them. But all the major events that happen in all these different things, like the War of the Lance, for example, are well documented in the novels. So if people got a chance to read those, they kind of know how things are going to go, who the enemies are, and it just felt really connected to those novels. So I am hoping that that does change. It could be something as simple as, advancing the timeline like they did for 4th edition D and Forgotten Realms, Or, they could do something, altogether original. I don't know the last time a Dragonlance novel came out, so it may not be as fresh in everybody's minds as it perhaps was back in 2003 when the 3.5 setting came out. But this one here, again, I think has a pretty strong chance of coming out. I would pick it up if it did. Kind of looking forward to it, just because I have, first edition and third edition. I have some second edition stuff as well. So, we'll see if this one comes out. I'd say, after the Forgotten Realms, this is probably the next one that we will end up seeing. Another setting that we may end up seeing in 5th edition might be Dark Sun. It was one that they released in 4th edition as well, and for 3rd edition, they actually did special issues of Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine for it. So in 2004, it didn't get a hardcover release, but it was supported in magazine form. It's actually the only setting for 4th edition that I didn't pick up. The reason for that, I'm not entirely sure I'm sold on the idea. For those who don't know, Dark Sun is kind of like the Psionics Handbook campaign setting. In it, arcane magic doesn't really work as it does in other settings. To cast arcane magic actually, has a toll on the land itself, so it can, physically destroy the land, and psionics is kind of taken over. I like the psionics systems, especially in 3.5, but I never really got into it to the point where I really felt the need to pick up this setting. I'm not sure if anything would change with 5th edition, but it stands to reason that if they do release something for the psionics, for example, that they'll probably try to push this again. It may have been more successful in 4th edition than I'm aware of. Like I said, it wasn't really for me, but it is one that is possible, and I know that there are definitely fans out there for it. So if you are a fan of the Dark Sun setting, then hopefully 5th edition will be promising for you. Alright, so we covered the 3 most likely settings to be released. Now I kind of want to take a little bit of time to talk about the one that I don't think is going to make the cut, unfortunately, and that is Greyhawk. It's kind of just a standard fantasy setting that's been around for quite some time now, but it seems that in popularity it's kind of been overtaken by Forgotten Realms, for example. In the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons, for the Greyhawk setting was actually the default setting. And it did get some use in Paizo's Dungeon Magazine when they did their campaign paths. They had, the Shackled City path, Age of Worms, and then of course Savage Tide, which all took place in the world of Greyhawk. Not so much Shackled City, it wasn't really written specifically for it, but Age of Worms was definitely set in it, and so was Savage Tide, but they were all the same world, so they all kind of took place in Greyhawk, which wasn't really supported at all in 4th edition, and I don't really see it coming back in 5th edition either. I'm not saying that we'll never see Greyhawk again, but it may be a while before we do see it. Give it some time, and the interest may come back. Just like I said, I think Forgotten Realms has kind of replaced it. They're both pretty standard fantasy settings, so I'm not really sure there's enough to differentiate the two of them from Wizards of the Coast point of view, so odds are this one probably won't see the light of day in 5th edition. I know that a lot of you may be fans of it. I think it's actually a pretty good setting myself, but the fact that if it doesn't get released, it's not really necessarily going to spoil my view of 5th edition. So maybe 6th edition we'll finally see it come back, and who knows, maybe they will decide to bring it back later on if they decide to release a few different settings. So we'll see what happens with this one, but my prediction is we've seen the last of Greyhawk for a while. So one of the settings that I'd kind of like to see, might be interesting to see if they manage to do it or pull it off, would be the Ravenloft setting. Big fan of the idea of it, kind of the more horror elements, and it's something that you can kind of just interject into any particular campaign setting where the plane that Ravenloft takes place in is its own kind of demi-plane. And it's something that they could do just a single book for. It would be easy enough, just have it as an October release, similar to what they did in 3.5 with Heroes of Horror, and it would be kind of a neat idea. I wouldn't mind getting an updated version of Ravenloft. They did Castle Ravenloft, the board game, which I do have over there, as well as Expedition to Castle Ravenloft in 3.5. So it's something that's, they've definitely kind of kept going throughout the years to kind of keep people's awareness of it. So who knows? There may be a chance that we'll see this again. Another setting that might be kind of interesting to see if they'll do is Planescape. Not entirely sure that they'll dedicate an entire setting to it, but they could do a single book on the city of Sigil itself and have some monsters and stuff in it as well if they wanted to. And then they could just kind of tie it together with something like a Manual of the Planes for the planar travel, since really Sigil is kind of the main hub of the Planescape world. It can reintroduce the factions, and I'd like to see that with the Lady of Pain and all the things that they have in there. So these are the two settings that are kind of maybes. They probably won't get a lot of supporting material if they do release them. Probably just a single book that ties in with something else, but the possibility is always there. Alright, and the last setting that I want to take the time to talk about today is the Eberron campaign setting. This is the newest one. It was part of a campaign design contest done by Wizards of the Coast prior to the release of 3rd edition, or 3.5 I should say. And it's been released for 3.5 and so far for 4th. I'm hoping that they do something a little bit different so far with this, because what they've done with the world hasn't really changed much between 3rd and 4th, for example. So it really felt, kind of like you were buying the same book all over again. And it even says in the campaign setting, basically to reference previous material for a lot of things of, for flavor of the different areas, the dragon marked houses and things like that. So it was kind of disappointing from the 4th edition view, and it's one of those things that is actually, a really good setting. It was just marketed horrifically bad. It focused way too much on things like the Warforged, for example, which is an element that I don't think a lot of people were necessarily interested in, especially at first, and definitely not as a way to kind of push the product. I mean, even the 4th edition one has the Lord of Blades on the cover, so it really still kind of stuck with that. But it is a good setting. I'm hoping to see it re-released for 5th edition, and they do something where they kind of advance the storyline, which is a good way of just creating a blank slate. They can make some sort of drastic change to the world, make it really feel like something has changed since the previous incarnations of it. And as long as they leave things like the cause of the Day of Mourning and the ruins of Zendrick, if they leave that alone and just kind of do other things, then it would be much more worthwhile purchase. But I am kind of looking forward to see if they do anything with this one. Alright, that about sums it up for this week's video. I just want to take a chance to talk about the different campaign settings. Before I do go, I just want to talk about how I want them to handle the releases. So, for example, this is the 4th edition books for Eberron. This is it, just the player's guide and the campaign setting. So just the 2 books. The Forgotten Realms setting, which was the most heavily supported, only had 5 in total, with the campaign guide, player's guide, Neverwinter setting, Menzo Brenzin, and Halls of Undermountain, if you want to include that as a release for it. So 5 books for that, 2 books for Eberron. But if we look at, for example, using Eberron as an example, this is the 4th edition releases. And here we have the 3.5 releases, so campaign setting. And as you can see, there were a lot of things released, especially with 3rd edition. They were sometimes releasing 3 books a month, and 1 or 2 of those books tended to be for one of the campaign settings. So they just really kind of flooded the market with some of these books, and some of them were really good and some of them weren't so great. Things like Face of Eberron, for example. Not that great in my opinion, but as you can see, a huge contrast. I'm just going to zoom out so you can have kind of a better perspective of all the different Eberron things that were released. And that's just, sort of an example. So I'm really prefer to see something like this, which is just, a book or 2 for each of the settings. Gives them a chance to release more settings and, can supplement them with adventures if they wanted to. Anyway, that's this week's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to comment below on which settings you'd like to see, which ones you expect, which ones you would like to see, which ones you probably don't want to ever see again. Again, thank you very much for watching YouTube. I hope you enjoyed. Next week's video will be all about supplements.